All right, welcome back, everyone. This is John Harris. I'm managing partner with Fortune Management and the host of 21st Century Dentistry podcast. And it's my pleasure to have Mr. Patrick O'Rourke with me, CEO of Practice Quotient. I'll let him tell us a little bit about what his organization does and what all he's involved in, based out of just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, where has been a colleague of mine for many years. Wealth of knowledge, background in the insurance space. I know with everything that's going on with dental insurance and adjustments and reimbursements and all that kind of stuff, it can be a little challenging. And so I invited him on to speak with us today and give us some guidance and insight and counsel on how to more effectively mitigate insurance reimbursements and build successful, profitable dental practices. So, Pat, how are you this morning, sir?
I am floating like a butterfly and stinging like a bee, my friend. How are you?
I can't complain, man. It's Tuesday, so it's already been a pretty busy week, but I'm able to catch up on the weekends. I'm fixing to head out of town right after we wrap up this podcast, and I'll be on the road the rest of the week.
Is that right? Yeah, I know you've been all over the Southeast, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia.
Yeah, that's actually where I'm headed. I'm headed to Kentucky when I leave here. I was west of Nashville yesterday, and then when I come back from Kentucky, I'm headed down to Athens. So I'll be down there.
That is a lot of miles, my friend.
That is.
Yeah. I try not to go stray too far from the ATL, Atlanta, Georgia.
I'm trying to be more cognizant of travel, because right now I'm doing about 80,000 miles a year, give or take. And so now that I'm building out our infrastructure of coaches, we've onboarded. I mean, we've got 10, 11 coaches here in the Southeast now, and I'm recruiting 3 more. So it's just the learning curve and to go from a new coach to a seasoned coach. That time frame slows things down a little bit, because it's just a lot of information, and the experience is very, very valuable. So that kind of slows the growth down just a little bit. But the more seasoned coaches we've got around the Southeast, and the more people I can have, train new coaches, and faster growth that way. That will cut way back on my travel, hopefully.
Wow. Well, God bless you. That's one thing I like about Fortune and what you guys do as a whole. So you guys do a lot of things. So you have to know about, you have to be proficient in many different areas of the dental business. Whereas I've never ran a dental practice. So, I don't get out of my swim lane. We only do one thing and one thing only, and that's, PPO, network analysis, negotiation, and strategic guidance. Mm-hmm. And that takes up all of my time, and I don't have time to do anything else. So I leave that up to the professionals like you guys. How do you present a treatment plan? I have no idea. What about scheduling? Beats me. Oh, you're having disputes in the team and culture. Well, I think John Harris will hold hands and sing Kumbaya. I'm not sure if that's what he does. I don't know. And I have my own team to be responsible for. So Fortune Management as a whole, just shout out to you and the entire organization, is, I really believe in the same philosophy from a business owner. I'm a business owner myself, right? So the underlying principles are parallel. So what did you want to chat about? You want to have some fun with dental insurance?
Yeah, let's give us a little insight into Practice Quotient. What does the catalog of services look like? What can someone expect? If they engaged you to help renegotiate insurance reimbursements?
Well, the Practice Quotient, or PQs, most people call it. I guess Practice Quotient doesn't roll off the tongue. I thought it was clever. My wife thought it was silly, but she was right as usual. So PQ, what we do as a firm, all right? And so we're a national firm. We have clients from Anchorage, LA to Miami to New York. And we, as a firm, take on clients. We're not a volume-based firm, so we're referral-based. We don't have a sales team. And so essentially somebody refers in that cares about their money, or it's a current clients, kind of a peer-to-peer referral. And that's just how it's always been. We've been blessed that way. And so typically they're going to call in and speak to one of, either myself or one of the other leaders here. And then we're going to ask them a bunch of questions. And sometimes you can tell in a phone call whether it's going to be the project is a slam dunk or not. Sometimes you have to do a consult, which is kind of a mini project. In a consultation, what we do is we say, all right, so, John Harris Dental Group, let's, pull out some reports from Dentrix or EagleSoft or Open or whatever it is you have. And then we get the fee schedules. My team does all of this in between our two teams. And then it's more of an informal analysis. I like to call it back of the napkin math, which is not precise or not like a full project, but essentially what we're trying to do is just determine whether that project or a full project, because these are not small, is worthwhile for you, from a return on investment standpoint, from a strategic standpoint, like what are you guys trying to do? And so then we have a call with the stakeholders and we say, look, here's what we see, right? And so I can speak more intelligently and specifically to John Harris Dental Group, when I can see your data. And then I, ask a bunch of questions and then we get a conversation going and we'll go, okay, well, what are our goals? Now let's assume for lack of a more technical outcome, out of a consult, we're really for me, my team, they have used their own words, but what I say is I go, look, this is a slam dunk. There's no reason for you not to move forward. You're going to love it. And, you should be sending us holiday cards every year. Otherwise something went terribly wrong. And the second thing I might say is I go, it'll be worthwhile. Right. So, and what I mean by that is typically because I can see it, I'm like, the project will pay for itself easily. But we're not talking, the return on investment would probably be around, $50,000 or so. And we'll make sure that you're not losing any more money. And strategically, there's some value there, but it's hard to quantify. And then it's up to you whether you want to move forward or not. Because $50,000 is not anything to sneeze at, right? But it's not going to buy you a new Mercedes, especially these days. So, and then occasionally, not even occasionally, I would say actually probably 1/3 of the time, I'm like, you know what? You don't need our help. Either your fee schedule's in a really good place and you just keep doing what you're doing, or just, fire that one carrier that's driving you up the wall and, move on. Or it could be the opposite of that, where I feel like there's not enough reason or leverage in our strength in our negotiating position, for example. And so then I just give them the best advice that I can. And, I tell them to call me in a year or two. Essentially,
can you dig into that one just a little bit? If you've got someone who you don't think has enough strength from a negotiating position,
sure.
What does that look like? Is that somebody that doesn't, they don't have a big enough active patient base, not generating enough revenue? Like, right. What puts them in a better position?
Let's say that you're doing $500,000 and you're in Brooklyn, which is a heavy space. That there's lots of other participating providers around you in a very managed care friendly spot. So $500,000 would be under the average, in my opinion. And you're on every single plan, and out of your $500,000, 20% of that's Medicaid. You have zero leverage. So can you use help? Yeah. And you're probably on too many plans and you probably should fix it. That is a different service, I think, than ours. I really don't like the word boutique, but we don't take on every client. So essentially, John, our job is, we have to go convince insurance companies that they need to pay our clients more than anyone else, or pay them more than they historically have been paying, which I know this sounds crazy, but they're just not in a hurry to do.
Right.
Right. So we have to, just by the very nature of our business, we tend to take on more established practices. We do take on some that are smaller now because of the way that we work from a fee basis. It's not a percentage anymore. But the $500,000 practice, all right, would they see a benefit Absolutely. Right. But they have some other stuff to clean up first, So I would think that they need to, take the money that they're going to spend here and try to increase their patient volume, whether it's marketing, whether there's a consultant, there's obviously something wrong with the practice, in my opinion, and so that would be like, hey, call John Harris. I know you're not up in Brooklyn, God bless you, Brooklyn. But, and then you get them right, their systems right, their claims trend, goes up by probably double. Now we have, a leg to stand on. Now, Brooklyn is still tough. Not that if you're in, Knoxville, Athens, anywhere in the South, really, it's different. So every market's a little bit different, which is another thing that we could look for in a consult. Let's say that in that consult, we get to the client and all of their revenue is with one carrier, right? And that's the dominant carrier in their region. There may not be anything we can do. So there's some very good regional examples of that, but it can even come down to a county. Like we have a client that's in a county in New Jersey where everything is one carrier. Like the county, this county employees, the government employees, the school board, the hospital, everything. All of their patient base, 70, 80%. And when you have that, it's very difficult because the insurance industry or that particular insurance company, it's all about leverage. If our job is to convince the insurance companies that they need our clients more than them, more than they need John Harris Dental Group more than John Harris needs, XYZ insurance company. XYZ insurance company's team, what their job is to figure out whether that's true or not. For them, right? Not for us, not for you, even, right? Just for them. That's who they get paid by. And so they would look at it and go, well, if John Harris walked, how many other providers do we have in that county? And is John Harris really going to walk? How much money is at risk for us? How much money is at risk for them? Once you get into, what I dub big boy ball, this is where the data analysis becomes much more important. It's not just looking at plans and, your crown and your prophy and saying this one's awful. There's a lot that goes on and has historically, and certainly these days, it's much more challenging to do what we do, and the tentacles from the different plans into each other make it all that much harder. So that's a very long-winded answer to your question. Sorry.
I totally get it.
I tend to over-explain it on occasion.
So I think it becomes more important based on what you're saying. I've always told people, and one of the things I encourage practices to do is, the better ran your operation is, the more revenue, the more patient volume, the more productive per patient, the better position it puts you in. Because like if your annual patient value is, north of $600, then typically on average, every other practice around you is going to be south of that number, which means you can acquire that patient base and immediately generate more revenue, immediately get a return without doing anything. And so the more productive you become, the better your insurance reimbursements, the more targets are available to you, the faster you can grow. So I think it becomes more and more important to really leverage the three components of corporate growth, which are just organic growth, which is just adding new patients to your patient base, fee schedule, et cetera. Merger and acquisition, which is a very, very underestimated opportunity for folks. And I think a lot of folks don't dig into that category because they don't know it well enough. And so they're a little afraid of it. They don't know what it would cost and all that kind of stuff. So they're not really open to even exploring what the potential there is when it's extraordinary. And then the last one, which is strategic relationships, which would be, relationships with insurance carriers or other providers, specialists, or even, county or city, organizations that help to feed my practice. So I think it becomes more and more important to start leveraging all three approaches to growth. because it puts them in a much better position when they go to the insurance company and say, hey, I would like you to pay me more for my crown.
Absolutely. So you brought up, an interesting point that I get asked, quite a bit, and that is, what is leverage? The number of locations matter. Yes, it does. All right. So, we have some larger clients, and we've had all types of clients, and when you're massive, when you have, when you're the largest specialty group in that state, it's easy for me anyway. That's a pretty big stick. But the number of locations in your geography and your saturation certainly makes a case. You get their attention. So there's corporate representatives, and typically they're going to hire, somebody like me, if they can, that's from the insurance industry. So, full disclosure to everybody out there in listener land, I am from the insurance industry directly, and I'm not ashamed of it at all. I identify with folks over there, and I think that the insurance industry and the insurance community and the provider community have a symbiotic relationship, and it should be viewed as business partners. And I know, right? Don't call me. I know that, that's not always seen that way by either side. So back to the subject at hand. If you are a large corporate DSO, and I'm not going to use any names, and you just call them up and say, look, we've got 300 locations, so we want more money, right? Because it's going to blast a hole in your network if we're not in. So is that, number of locations is important. Your overall claims volume, and this is what we look at too, and not patient. So I thought that was really interesting. I didn't know that about the patient, and then why there's an acquisition. And the other part of it is
number of claims is more important than actual number of patients.
I would say dollar volume. Volume. And then, depending on how big you are, you can then look at, what's the overall healthcare outcome, which I feel like is lost a lot in the conversations. How are we making these patients better and decreasing their overall need for claims in the long term? That's where the conversation gets more intellectually stimulating for me. Sometimes you can have that, on your single general dentist. It's much harder to do that because it's not going to move the needle. But that is something that is at least given lip service when you get into the large, 50, 100 million game and beyond. How are we making that better? And I think that the question, and there's certainly a debate of whether large groups do make it better or not, and I'm not here. I don't really have an opinion on that. I'm fairly neutral. But in theory, they should. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because what the aggregated data that insurance companies are looking at to determine whether they should raise their reimbursements are the amounts of the claims that are being submitted, correct? So if you've got larger DSOs and that DSO has a location in your city right beside you, and they've got this really good crown reimbursement, and that's what they're submitting, and you're submitting something that's 20% lower, then theoretically, when the insurance company, or when you go to renegotiate and they're looking at what is being submitted in this area, they're going to drag the average up.
No, so their standard fee is really what should help set that. So traditionally, how you determine what's called the usual, customary, and reasonable, also the reasonable and customary, which is a formulary which is proprietary for each insurance company. So they have their own data, they massage the data, they buy data, and then they can chop it up per plan. So, and you'll never know what the formulary is. and I could tell you how to create one, but then I don't know. You would bore everybody and you wouldn't believe me. Anyway, so there's the reasonable and customary, or the UCR of any given area. Let's take Atlanta, right? Is based on the claims, but what should be submitted on the claims is the full fee of the practice. It's actually in the contract. And so I highly encourage all providers to submit their full fee. If you only submit the contracted rate, which we have clients do that, and they're like, I get what you're saying, I just don't want to see the write-offs because it makes me want to vomit in my mouth. And I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right? So there's in accounting, they don't want their AR, and I'm sure there's something button you can press in the practice management software. Again, that's not my swim lane. The bottom line is, if you only submit what's on what you think is the contracted rate, you are A, losing money, and B, dragging down the area. And if you have too many folks that are doing that, then it's problematic. Because that is how they're determining what the fee is for that area, right? It's by looking at what the standard fee is. So if you were not on any plans at all, right, you would just submit John Harris's fee. You'd say, my fee for a crown is $1,300. That's what you submit. And so they encourage, and they actually put it in the contract that you're supposed to submit your full fee. So it wouldn't matter what the actual reimbursement is, or the contracted rate is, if you're always submitting $1,300 or whatever your fee is, if the crown reimbursement is $900 or $800.
So when they're going in and reevaluating their reimbursements, they don't take the amount that they're actually reimbursing providers in that area into consideration. They're only looking at UCR.
No, but the UCR is how you're then looking at it. So that's a good question. We're about to dork out. So put on your seatbelt. So what you're talking about is a network repricing. So then you're taking claims from a particular employer group, and then you're running it through your network, and then you're pricing it from there. So then you can determine what your claims trend would be from the current carrier. So this is what I used to do this, and I kind of miss it every now and then, is doing large employer group sales. So large is 100 plus thousand, big. And so this is how you determine your price point is through underwriting. So you take 2 years of the claims from that employer, not the dental practice, the employer, and then you run it through your network. Right. And so then you determine the price. Now, they don't want to give that information away either, but depending on how big you are and what the broker, how much influence the benefit consultant has, they could get it. And then, that's also how you come up with the premium price. So, different groups, employer groups have different utilization trends. So they do take that into account in how they price their products. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is why one of the things that I preach when I'm on stage is that, it doesn't do any good to negotiate the highest fee schedule in the world if they can't put patients in your chairs. Mm-hmm. And here's what I mean by that. Let's say that, there's, XYZ insurance company in your market, whether it's Atlanta, Miami, Dallas, Chicago, Sacramento, LA, doesn't matter. And they are you look at their fee schedule and you're like, I love this fee schedule right here. I'm getting reimbursed $1,000 for a crown. And, it's awesome. It's like, 20% discount overall from your fees. And then you have another fee schedule and it's about 45 to 50% discount. It's awful. So they're paying you $700 for a crown. And so this is for the dentist. We all know that you look at the D2740 first, and then you look at the pro fee. We all know that in the insurance industry. It's not a secret. But let's just say from an aggregate perspective, right? 45%. Well, that's huge, right? And you're not covered in your overhead. Now, let's say that you're taking that crappy fee schedule because they have a lot of patients in their area.
Mm-hmm.
Why do they have so many patients? Or members in our parlance? Or why do they have the school board and the hospital and all the big companies in your area?
Because they're cheaper to the companies.
That's right. Correct, sir. And they have all of the providers. So there's a bit of a balance. Mm-hmm. the object of the game, if I'm the insurance company, and this doesn't make them bad people, by the way, it's just how business works, is that you want to be able to grow and get to a dominant market share position, 50, 60%, whoever's in charge will determine the tipping point. And once you get there, then you squeeze it, right? Squeeze the cost of care. What's the cost of care? That's all the providers out there. That's you dentists, oral surgeons, periodontists, all right? And then you squeeze that cost of care down, all right? And then we all get bonuses and our stock price goes up and we can all go play golf. And when I say that on stage, everybody kind of laughs, but this is very true. So, how can you combat that? Right. So you want to be able to kind of grade your contracts on a curve. Our philosophy here at Practice Quotient is that assuming that the fees of the client are normal, right, and not crazy, they're reasonable. We're very conservative, just so you know. And so 65%, the fee schedule, no matter who they are, should be at 65%, which is typically covering their business overhead. If you include the doctor's salaries, which you should, because their families really want you to, right? And so, hey, we'd like you to break even, right? But we would prefer if you made a little bit of profit. That's how we see things. Not everybody on the other side of the policy thinks that way. What they're looking at is, well, how competitive are we? So if the providers are they're making many of the payers pay, not just, 65, which would be a 35% effective discount. They're like, hey, I want a 20% discount, but then they're giving a 50% discount to the biggest, or a large commercial carrier. Then the larger carrier is going to take all the business away from the carriers that are being fair to the provider community. A very good example of this, and I don't think I'm talking out of school. If you look at, Washington State, if somebody calls me from Washington State, Seattle, it gets a short conversation. I'm just like, look, there's nothing we can do. All of your patient volume and dollar volume and revenue is tied up with one carrier. That carrier dominates. You're stuck. There's other states where that's happened. There's a state next door to my state that has a very large college rivalry between a tiger and an elephant. I don't need those boys coming crossing the border with shotguns, so they shall remain nameless. But it's the same thing if you call from Birmingham. I'm like, look, there's nothing we can do. And so it doesn't make sense, in my professional opinion. It's just one man's opinion, right? So there's some of my colleagues on this side, professionals, consultants that do what I do, that I respect, and they're like, well, you got to get something. Well, the thing is, long term, if you beat up all the other carriers, it just you're exasperating the problem in that market. And so it's short term. It may look, you can hang your hat on it, I guess, but that not for long. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I look at every market as a whole, and then healthcare is local as well, and so it can get down to like a county. And we have one client that he wouldn't. A very, very small town, but he didn't want to get off a plan because the mayor was on that plan. Mayor of the town, literally, and so he's like, I don't want to make the mayor mad. So I was like, well, that's a good reason. Right. So we didn't get off that plan. Ultimately, my advice out there to everybody in listener land is choose your business partners wisely. I'm a small business owner too. And so you need to understand what your reimbursements are, but you also need to understand how much discounting you need to do on a high level to fill your chairs, right? So, Sean, I'm sure you talk about this all the time.
Yeah, I love the language that you use when you refer to them as partners, and I do as well. I do see them that way. There are times when it makes sense to have a partner on the insurance side, and there's times when it doesn't make sense. Like if you're a startup and you have 0 patients, it makes a lot of sense to have a lot of partners. You need to build a patient base. Not to say you can't do a startup fee for service. It's going to take you a lot longer to get to $1 million, or it's going to take you a lot longer to get to break even. So if you were, responsible when you did that startup, you had a formal business plan, you had projections, and you had, this is how many patients I estimate I can attract per month. This is the revenue I'm going to generate. This is when I break even. And you go to the bank, you get a loan, they give you working capital, and you break even before you run out of money. So if you plan correctly, then that's the way it works. If you don't, if you miss the mark, then you run out of money and you've got more month left at the end of the money. And that's a problem. Okay. Because now you're working an associateship down the road at 30% of collections just to pay the bills in your business. And you may or may not be taking home any money. So it's important to know what you're doing in that space. But as your business grows and you build an active patient base of 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 patients, and you've only got, 7 or 8 operatories, there comes a time when you're out of capacity and you can't get recare patients into your schedule. It takes you a month to get a new patient on your schedule. I would argue that's way too long. It takes a month or 2 to get SRP on your schedule. I would argue that's too long. It takes you a month and a half to 2 months to get a crown on your schedule. I would argue that's way too long. So you start, running out of capacity, and there's a balancing act there. I have a model that I follow, and when we hit this mark, this is when we add providers. This is when we add space, or this is when we decide that it no longer makes sense to have this partner for this particular insurance plan that is only bringing us 400 patients out of 4,000 and has a write-off of 45% compared to what I'm writing off on other plans. So there's analysis that you do, and you back out of that plan, you free up some capacity, the gaps get filled in with other PPOs and fee for service, you grow, you back out of another plan, you back out of another plan, you back out of another plan, and over a period of time, at some time, hopefully way before the end of your career, you're a completely fee for service practice, because you don't need all the partners at that point. So if you get the mark and you do everything right, then that happens sooner rather than later. But when you get to that place, what that does is it gives you 100% control over your fees, so that when there's a shortage in the talent pool, and the talent pool is very shallow, and and your payroll costs are escalating, when inflation is 7, 8, 9%, when you're paying $14 for a gallon of milk, you need to pass some of those additional costs on to your consumers. You can't do that when you're locked into insurance reimbursements. And so Pat, he's a fantastic resource, because he does give us some level of control over our reimbursements by going to the carriers on your behalf and saying, hey, this is where we are. This is what we want to do. And we can help offset some of those costs, but there are limitations. If you're a fee for service practice, there's 0 limitations. You can charge whatever you want to, as long as you don't price yourself out of the market and run everybody off.
You just got to run a big marketing, but you have to understand the marketing part of it. You got to really start viewing how we view PPOs as just outsourced marketing costs, right? Mm-hmm. I'm neutral, right? So to all my colleagues out there, I got love for you. Sometimes you're fit, sometimes you're not. It just depends on that client. There's really not a one size fits all solution, in my opinion. There are some other, the insurance industry calls us consultants, and to me, you guys are the consultants. Right? What we do is, dental network managed care analytics and contract strategic guidance. So I guess that is a bit of consulting. But so there are some other firms out there that they're like, well, here's what we do. We do the one thing, and it's just off the shelf. And if your only tool is a hammer, then the whole world looks like a nail, right? Mm-hmm. And so what we do, and again, it's more comprehensive, but it's in the long run, I think it fits the client's needs better, because healthcare is local and things change. Hello, COVID. And so it's, how are we calibrating our network participation strategy to fit everything that, like your model, like you helped them create a model, like here's where we need to expand, et cetera. How many plans do you need? Which ones are the right fit for you? That varies broadly. And I'm saying it varies. You can have two clients on each side of the street, and one contract is great and they love it, and on the other side, it's awful. Well, how does that happen? Well, just speaking on finances, right? Let's say the one on the first side of the street, it pays, a fair discount of 25%. And the one on the other side of the street, it's discounting, but they're losing money at 40%. Well, how is that? Well, the one on the first one has a lot of older patients, has a lot of dentures and bridge work. And on the other side of the street, they have a lot of kids, do fluoride, sealants, and they do implants, and they're not doing bridges, and they definitely don't do a lot of dentures, right? So like that can swing it pretty big, and then you have a matter of, well, what claims are paid and how does the office staff feel about them, and then which patients do you have on it.
Where were the fees positioned when they went into network?
Mm-hmm. And then on the treatment that they do, and so that's what comes into play, from a financial perspective. And then it comes to the, frankly, the owner and the doctor and the leadership and the stakeholders of that practice. Like, how do they feel about, plans and that plan, or a specific plan in particular? And then you have to look at your area and how important is that, are being in network to the overall population. So if you look at a place like Southern California, New York City, Chicago, coastal Florida, where I'm from originally, those are very managed care friendly areas. People know what the plans are. They tend to go in network. They tend to watch you in network. But I've been to, small town Kentucky and small town Tennessee too. And they're like, well, you just don't understand, but people really want you to be in network. And I'm like, I've never heard that before. I've never heard it in Miami or LA or Denver.
Does your procedure mix determine how much leverage you have? Like if you're doing procedures that no one else in a 30-mile radius is doing, let's say you're a GPR in the armpit of Alabama, and no one within 30, 40 miles is doing, anterior maxillary implants or sinus lifts or bone grafting. Nobody's doing third molars. Nobody's doing IV sedation. Nobody's doing the stuff that you're doing. You have something, because the insurance company is all about access to care, right? Like they want the more access to care, the bigger the carrot they can dangle to companies. And so if I have a broader procedure mix, does that give me more leverage than the guy next door that's only doing crown and bridge?
Alabama is a poor example, but to answer your question, in most markets, yes. Yes, resoundingly, yes. So if you were in Nashville or anywhere in Kentucky, anywhere in Tennessee, anywhere in Georgia, anywhere in the Carolinas, Florida, Virginia, anywhere except Alabama. Not just there's, you never know. And listen, God bless y'all in Alabama. So I'm not talking any trash.
You're picking on them in the wrong year, man, because they missed the playoffs. So, they're hurting. They're going to be a little bit more sensitive this year than they have been in the past.
Sensitive. 20 years. Well, you know what? John Harris has got tissues. He'll hold hands with you. He'll sing Kumbaya, and then he'll probably slip in a little Rocky Top in there just to twist that knife a little bit. So don't come looking for me. Go look for John.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point too, with insurance participation essentially being a form of marketing, and it is, because traditional marketing. If I call Shay with Digital Resource and I say, I just had him on the podcast last week. I call Shay,
shout out, he's a good dude.
Yeah, and I say, hey man, I need 50 new patients a month. What would you recommend? And he says, I would do, social media. We'll do social media management. We'll do some Google pay-per-click and some Facebook and Instagram ads and build you a new website, do SEO, and it's going to cost you, $4,000 a month. And I say, okay, great. That sounds wonderful. Do you guarantee you're going to send me 50 new patients a month? Well, there's a very high probability that you'll get 50 based on our analytics and math. This.
Right. And track record. Right.
It looks as though this approach will get you 50. Well, what happens if it doesn't get me 50? Do I pay you less? Well, no, our fee is our fee. Okay. That's traditional marketing. An insurance company says, don't like that. If we don't send you new patients, you shouldn't pay us. But if we do, you're going to knock 40% off your crown fee. So it's because insurance, it works this way in every business, in virtually every type of transaction. If you mitigate, the more you mitigate risk, the more expensive it's going to be, because you're not, that's where risk and return.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah. If you want less risk, it's going to cost you more. Just like if I do a merger acquisition and we do an earnout arrangement, rather than just going to the bank, getting a note for $1 million and giving you a note, rather than do that, let's say there's a lot of risk in that business. The guy's doing in-house financing. They're miscoding, perio, fees are in the 40th percentile. AR's atrocious. There's a whole lot of risk there. Okay. Well, that's too much risk for me. So what I want to do is I want to pay you a percentage of the revenue that we generate on those patients. Okay. Over a period of time. And sometimes folks are agreeable to that. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they should be agreeable to it because they're going to make twice as much that way than they would if they just got a check today. Other times it makes sense to do the check today. But on our earnout, it's going to cost the buyer more over time than it would if they just went to the bank and cut them a check. But if they go to the bank and cut them a check, they're 100% at risk. If they pay them on a percentage over time, it mitigates their risk, because if the patients don't transfer, I don't pay you. An insurance company works the same way. You don't pay me unless I send you patients. But if I do send you patients, those patients are going to be more expensive than they would be if it worked out the way it's supposed to with Shay.
Mm-hmm. So let's I like this. Let's tackle this and look at it. Let me play devil's advocate a little bit. So in my mind, if we can all agree, which I think we do, that these are just outsourced marketing costs, right? Mm-hmm. Then, so we need to understand, so why are you doing that? Well, to avoid empty chair time, right? So that's a good reason. I'll buy that. You get put on the network directory. So is Acme Insurance Company really sending me that patient, right? Where do I appear on that network directory? Did they actually, say go to Patrick O'Rourke Dentistry, Dr. Patrick O'Rourke? Right. That make my mama real proud. She's really proud anyway. But anyway, so, but let's just, for the sake of this next part, the other reason why you're doing it is for referrals. So one of the things that I preach when I'm on stage, I go, look, there's no difference if you're given a discount for a new patient special or free whitening for life or implant special, whatever it is you come up with, or, and you say, look, I'm going to be on sale, right? And then you bring in a cost-conscious consumer. They come in, right? And they're out there. And there's empirical evidence that this works, right? You go on sale, you bring a cost-conscious consumer. They come into John Harris Dental Group. They have an amazing patient experience. And then they refer to their friends, coworkers, church congregation, et cetera. Now, those people are coming in because of the referral, the influencer in their life, right? And the endorsement of them, because you have a convenient location. You have the best chairside manner and all around there. They want to be cool like their friend. Who really cares? As long as they're coming in at full fee. Maybe they care who puts fingers in their mouth, right? I'll raise my hand, right? I'm a consumer. And so I do care very much. And, I don't care whether you're on sale or not. And so one of the things that, if you're listening to this show, if you're on every single plan, then you're on sale all the time and you're not able to take advantage of the really leveraging PPOs properly, which is, hey, I'm going to be on sale sometimes for the cost-conscious consumer, and then they're going to refer me to their friends, coworkers, church congregation, et cetera.
Right. That's a great point.
And so, the two things is, are they actually sending you folks or are they hiding you? Right. So if you have a good contract too, a lot of times what happens is they're going to hide you. You're going to be on page 12. They're not going to find John Harris Dental Group, right, on the website directory. I don't know how much people use that now these days. I think most people actually just use Google, and then they call you up. No, you tell me. This is my question for you. When they call up, then they're like, well, I saw John Harris Dental Group. Like, you guys are awesome. Lots of good reviews. And, I talked to, my friend Frank, and he said, you guys are awesome. Are you guys in ABC? Are you in my network? Most of the time they're calling and they think the dental practice is the Oracle of insurance and responsible for all of that, as opposed to digging through, or maybe they go online and they just put in Harris on their website. What do you think?
Onto the insurance company's website?
Yeah.
Honestly, man, I don't know what. I would love to see what percentage of patients actually go to the insurance company website to find a provider. I've personally never done that for any type of healthcare provider. I've gone to Google, and I'm not saying I'm special, but I think I'm pretty.
I think you're special.
I think I'm pretty average. I'm your pretty typical average consumer. And I'd go to Google and I'll type it in, and I'll see what the options are. I'll look and see, is it a nice office? What's the team and the doctor look like, and website and reviews. And based on that, that's why I call them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even look for insurance. I have never gone to an insurance company website.
I'm from the insurance industry, so obviously I have. But do I now these days as a business owner? Right? No, hell no. I don't even have dental insurance. I just use my FSA or HSA.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm the patient that you want in there. But it's true even for medical, because medical insurance has gotten so out of whack. If my daughter needs something, I don't care if they're in network, right? My health insurance provider, if my doctor, I got the most expensive fish oil I've ever. It's not that, it's pharmaceutical grade, and they're like, well, you got to do step therapy. I'm like, I don't really give a crap. I don't want to die. I trust my doctor. I don't even like him that much. I've told him, I'm very direct. I'm like, I don't like you that much, but I trust you, because he's always telling me I can't eat ice cream. I'm too overweight, blah, blah, blah. Right. And so I got this, I call it fancy fish oil, and it's crazy expensive, but I don't care, because I trust him more than the step therapy. And it's the same thing if I had a dental plan. And PPOs, by the way, by design, by name, mean that you can go in and out of network, right? Only DHMOs mean in network only. And there's some EPOs, but that's only going to be in some markets. And so by definition, PPOs are designed so that you can go wherever you want. Now the insurance industry, and I'll raise my hand, right, because I was really good at this, is getting the folks at open enrollment to understand that they better go in network so that they can maximize their benefit, right? So I would use a bullhorn. I'd tattoo it to your face if I could legally, right? And so, but are they good at routing people in? Yes, absolutely. But a PPO by definition means that you can go out of network. All right. And that's 85% of the market. In fact, it's even more in most states. So I think that understanding that is the key. So even if you're missing out on 2 out of 10, new patient opportunities, you got to do the math on it, brother, is what I say. To clients. And that's why I like talking to folks like you and even like Shay, marketing folks, because it's just outsourced marketing costs. If you do the math and you go, look, you're losing $400,000 a year, right? You're just writing off as network participation discounts. So that's outsourced marketing costs. You're just not writing a check. That's what people used to say to me. They're like, well, it's just free marketing, Pat. And I'm like, no, Bubba, it's not free. All right. You're just not writing a check. So I'm not Shay, but I bet if Shay was here right now and we said, hey, Shay, if we gave you half of that, if we gave you $200,000, could you replace the patient volume? I'm not him, but I bet he nods his head vigorously. Absolutely. Yeah. Give me a call. Yeah. Here's my telephone number. Write me a check. We'd have to probably check with him and Shay, hope you don't mind us using your name as an example. But that's really what you have to look at it. So sometimes I ask clients, I'm like, if it's outsourced marketing costs, what do you do? What's your market? They're like, well, I don't have any marketing budget. I don't have to spend anything in marketing. And I'm like, but you're on every single plan. So yeah, you are. And they're like, oh, I just get patients, and I'm like, then you become a victim of your own success, right? Because let's say that you're on, I like to educate on these, John, while I'm on stage, and I'll try to do my best on the show. It says, here's another point. All of those providers out there in listener land, if you're on a really, really crappy contract and it's paying you, 45 cents on the dollar and you're losing money, that's bad. Because remember the startup that John mentioned? If you run out of cash flow, you're out of business, and that's not good, right? So rule number one, don't lose money. So if you're losing money and you know it, now that patient comes in, you're going to do a good job because that's who you are, and you're a professional, and you're going to treat people ethically, right? And you love what you do. So you do a good job for that patient, right? They come in and then they refer to their friends or coworkers, right? Where does everybody spend their time? At work. Where did they get that contract, or where did they get that dental insurance? At work. And so now you become a victim of your own success. Now your referrals are coming in. Now you're getting more referrals, and more referrals at 45 cents on the dollar. Now your schedule's full, but you're losing money and you're working yourselves to the bone, and the phone's ringing and it seems like you're successful, but you're not.
Yeah. So in a perfect world, what you would do is go in network with the PPO that has the lowest adjustment or a moderate adjustment, but on that plan, there are influencers, and those influencers are referring you other patients who are out of network, who have insurance that you're not in network with. So you're taking the adjustment on that 1, 2, or 3 plans, but community on referring patients that have insurances that you're not in network with. So if you look at your total patient volume and compare that to your adjustments, there's also a number that I would encourage you to calculate called new patient conversion, which is the cumulative value of new patient. Okay. And so it's a balancing act. So you want to, you go out of network with a plan and your adjustments drop, but your new patient volumes drop and your new patient conversion stays, then you make no difference whatsoever. But if you go in network with a plan with a really good reimbursement and your new patients go way up, then your new patient conversion benefits from that. And that is a very positive impact.
That's good stuff right there. I wrote that down. New patient conversion. So I ask all the time, and I've broad spectrum of answers. I'm like, what's a new patient worth? Again, I don't know. Right. I'm an insurance guy. When I'm talking to docs, they don't know exactly what a new patient is worth to them. And I don't know either. What's the lifetime value? How do you determine that? So I would say that a lot of clients and a lot of dental practices, the ones that are successful and have been around for a long time, and I would say a lot of our clients, one thing that I'm proud of is that they get to a point in the independent ones, maybe they have 1, 2, 3 practices. And the ones that get down and they're on maybe 2, 3, sometimes 4, maybe 5 times fee schedules of discounting. The ones that are doing that on a regular basis, let's say that 40 to 50% of their revenue is discounted via one of their business partners, and they're truly business partners that have fair fee schedules. And then they're also doing their best to promote those carriers that they are in network with. And then the other half is coming in at full fee, either out of network or cash pay. If you get to a 50-50 split, you're winning, baby. That's, and I've seen that many, many, many times. Most of our clients are, independent, kind of top tier established practices. We have some larger groups, full disclosure, we're neutral. We need to have conversations because these projects are detailed. And if you want to get to the promised land, it takes a while to get there, so it's.
When you say 50-50, you mean 50% of your patients are on a plan that you're in network with and 50% are out?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Sorry, my internet cut out or something, and I got kicked out of the meeting, came in, and I think I missed part of what you were saying. That totally makes sense.
It's okay. We're recording it, and I kept talking.
Very good. One thing, there's some confusion around new patient conversion. People think that means the number of like emergency patients that you convert to new patients, or the number of phone calls that you convert to new patients, new patient conversion. What it actually is, and I don't know if other consulting companies look at this number or not, but what it actually is it's the number of dollars, total collective dollars, that your volume of new patients converts to. So take annual collection and divide it by number of 0150s, not 0140s. Okay, so we're not looking at emergencies because those people technically aren't new patients. And you're going to do D0140s on existing patients. So you can't really use the D0140, for new patients. So what I would encourage you to do is do D0150s. That's a dedicated, confirmed, this person's becoming a new patient. Take total annual revenue and divide it by that number. And that gives me the cumulative value of a new patient. Because like Pat said, you get a new patient into your practice, they might refer you 5 friends or family members. So revenue goes way up. And you also get new patients into your practice that don't refer you anyone and don't accept any treatment. So you've got the person that accepts the $10,000 treatment plan, refers you 5 friends and family members, very high, lot of revenue. And then you've got the person that, does the 0150, doesn't come back for recare, doesn't complete any treatment, doesn't refer you anybody. So it's a cumulative value. It's not production or collection per new patient. It's a cumulative number.
That's interesting. I've never heard that.
So look at it like this. If your new patient conversion's $5,000, right? I've seen as high as like 30,000. I've seen as low as like 200 and 300. Okay. A lot of things affect that number: PPO percentage, fee schedule, insurance participation, treatment acceptance percentage, procedure mix. A lot of stuff affects that number. Okay. So it's a very comprehensive number, like annual patient value. But let's say that you did $1 million last year. It's very easy. Did $1 million last year. Your new patient conversion is $2,000. Or I'm sorry, you saw 250 new patients. So $1 million divided by
250 D0150s.
250 D0150s, and you did $1 million. Your new patient conversion is 4,000. $1 million divided by 250. If you want to do 1.5 million next year, then take 1.5 million and divide it by 4,000. Now you need 375 new patients. So just put together a marketing plan. Now, if you go in network with a bunch of insurance plans to get that 375, guess what just happened? Your new patient conversion goes down, which means you're going to need more than 375. But if you get with Shay, you get with the community, you put a referral program in place, you buy a practice and merge it in. A lot of things you can do, but if you get 375 new patients, you're going to do 1.5 million.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that.
The other thing you can do is
simple to me.
The other thing you can do is add procedures, get your insurance reimbursements renegotiated, improve your fee schedule, schedule more productively, improve your treatment acceptance and PPO percentage. Your new patient conversion goes up. And now you don't need 375 new patients. You only need 300 to hit 1.5 million because your new patient conversion is higher.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense.
So one thing and as we're kind of running out of time here, I did want to speak on one thing.
My favorite color is green.
What's that?
I said my favorite color is green. Is that what you wanted to ask me? Oh, no, not that. All right. Sorry, I jumped the gun a little bit.
From what I'm finding, and I do this all the time, like a lot of my clients are backing out of insurance plans, help to structure that process and what it looks like. There's 4 ways that you can go out and network with insurance companies that are effective. Some of them have more risk, some of them have less risk. Okay. So if you're a more risk tolerant person, you have a higher threshold for risk, just rip the Band-Aid off. Okay. If you have less.
Whoa. Like we need to just drop all the plans?
Well, just talking about a plan.
Okay. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like if your threshold for risk is higher, if your tolerance for risk is higher, then just send the insurance company a letter today, say we're out of network. And then as patients start coming in, let them know, oh yeah, we dropped the insurance plan. We're not network anymore.
Right. I don't
Right.
think
Your risk of attrition is, your risk of attrition is higher. The risk that patients are upset is higher.
Right.
Right. But you get the result today. Right.
But yeah, I guess you get to the promised land faster. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's higher risk.
All right. Yeah. I'll buy. I'm picking up
higher risk, but you get the return quicker. The opposite end of the spectrum is the like I said, it's the exact opposite. It's reverse blocking. Right. So you can, rather than go out of network with the insurance company, you can go into your schedule and you can put blocks that are dedicated to certain insurance plans. So if my write-off on Delta is 40%, and I've got, and what I'm typically finding generally when I do the analysis, if a particular insurance plan represents 1/3 of your patient base or higher, then if you drop that network, if you drop that plan, it's going to have a negative effect, which means your collections are actually going to go down. Either stay the same or go down. 1/3, that's kind of like the sweet spot. It's if it's less than 1/3, you can drop the plan and your collections will either stay the same or go up because you're being reimbursed more. If they're more than 1/3, then it actually it's either stays the same or has a negative effect. So there's kind of a balancing act right there. So what I tend to do,
we need to get this. I love data, like what you just said.
I do too.
I want some empirical. I want to be able to look at like what's our variables, because that's interesting. So I'm going to keep my eye out on that. So continue. I'm sorry.
So what I do is, if you're 1/3 or more, then what I would do is I would reverse block. So let's say Delta recently did this in a practice, actually 2 practices. One of them is doing a strategy called the preemptive strike, which is where they are letting patients know over a 6-month period of time, hey, listen, effective on this day, we're no longer going to be in network with the insurance plan. So they're just giving them kind of a courtesy that says, we just want to keep you informed and let you know what's coming.
Okay. They're setting expectations.
Right. We're getting phenomenal
proactively communicating.
Yeah. We're getting phenomenal results with that. Virtually zero attrition. Now, that's in the 6-month period of time leading up to actually dropping the plan. We'll find out what the real attrition is after the plan is actually discontinued. Okay. Right. So that's effective January 1. Another practice, we're reverse blocking. So these are the two risk avoidant, lower risk tolerance, approaches on the far right.
All right. So these are 2 different ones. You're saying reverse blocking is, maintaining a certain scheduled allotment, right?
Yeah.
If Delta capping it out in your schedule. Now, I don't want to mention any insurance carriers by name. So,
So Insurance ABC is 1/3 of my practice. John says that's too high. Let's get it down to 20% or 15% and then drop them. So right now, if Insurance ABC is 1/3 of my practice, and that means out of every 9 patients on my hygiene schedule, 3 of them are ABC insurance. So I'm going to go into my schedule and put 2 blocks. Those 2 blocks are available for ABC insurance, and those are the only blocks that ABC insurance patients get.
So I know we're going long, but just a caveat, right, on that strategy. There is a clause. It's very common in most network participation agreements that states that you cannot treat any of their members any differently than anyone else, especially when it comes to scheduling. And so I'm not saying that any carriers that have been mentioned today have that in there. But I also think it's a common clause. It's in most network participation agreements. And I may or may not be nodding my head vigorously. All right. So, dear listeners, in your mind's eye, now I read the contracts, so my clients don't. So just heads up. Now, what you can do, though, and a lot of times, is you can call up said insurance company and say, hi, we love you so much, but we're full. So we can't take on any new patients. So that is very, very common in DHMOs. It's always been a part of it. PPOs, not as common, but these days it is, particularly when you're getting killed by the one carrier that's 40% of your practice and you're only making 40% of your full fee and you're losing money, right? And so there's not much that they can, sometimes they're going to ask why. And I would encourage, everybody out there in listener land to, very professionally and, politely and respectfully just articulate the reason, which is we're losing money here. And I'm not able to provide the type of quality of care that the patients are accustomed to, and frankly, that they deserve. We can't put all the safety protocols in place. We can't see as many patients these days. We have our, the air filtration systems because of COVID, et cetera, et cetera. This is how it's got to be. And the more, and a lot of times they'll let you do that. And so I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I'm just giving, I'm a big dork and I have to always put the disclaimers in there. By the way, my opinion, not a substitute for qualified legal counsel, licensed to practice law in your state or any other states. Just one man's opinion. So
what you said is actually an even more risk adverse strategy.
Correct.
Just saying, hey, we're not accepting any new, because national average 30 to 40% recare effectiveness. That's like continuing care retention. So if you're only going to retain 30 to 40% of those patients under a particular plan anyway, then if you stop accepting new patients, then over about an 18 to a 36 month period of time, 60 to 70% of those patients are gone anyway.
So I like mitigating risk. And so to your point, I think it's less risky that way. And that way you're not, and a lot of times I'll hear from clients is that, they've had the patients for a long time, and certainly the staff is going to feel that way. They've seen the people come in and maybe they have multi-generations of the same family or something. And in most cases, it's the God's honest truth. It's just the reality on the ground. And so I feel like if you're not being treated fairly by a business partner, you need to take some action, but you need to articulate, that to them. I like to communicate. That's why I'm very direct. Because sometimes they can't hear you, right? They can't hear you cursing their name. They can't hear you in their boardrooms. They can't hear you. But they can run a report and say, oh, well, geez, Athens, Tennessee, or Athens, Georgia, or, any city, any town out of our 20 participating providers, 10 of them say that they're not taking any new patients. And that's a problem. That's a problem, brother. Because the employer groups are ultimately the ones that are going to decide. And then if they can't get any new patients and, the patients referring people they work with, and then they call John Harris Dentistry and you're like, I'm sorry, we can't take on anymore. We're just, our panel is closed for that. And that's why they don't want you to say that, so some of them may push back on it. And then you're going to have to, then decide what type of risk you're willing to tolerate with doing the schedule allotment, right? Because it's not illegal. It's just a breach of contract. So, again, not a lawyer. All right. We don't dispense legal advice at my firm or on this show. But that's technically what they're going to do. So, I've had some clients say, well, what are they going to do about it? I'm like, I don't know. They could see it, but they're probably not going to take time. If they got really mad that, they might kick you out of network. That's probably better for you in the long run anyway. Right. And
so with all that said and done, just as we kind of run out of time here, there's a lot. Don't be, I would say,
don't be scared.
The more revenue the more successful your practice, right? The more revenue you're generating, the more providers you have, the more patients you have, the more procedures you offer, the more leverage you have with insurance reimbursements and carriers. Leveraging merger and acquisition and organic growth strategies to build a more successful business. very beneficial. Don't be afraid of that stuff. There's nothing scary about it. Just working to build a successful business is the benefits are extraordinary in many different ways. When you start getting into some of these more advanced strategies with, risk mitigation through insurance renegotiation or insurance scheduling strategies or whatever the case may be, or positioning your practice with an effective insurance strategy to optimize new patient growth, or all things considered, just make sure that you're getting the right guidance. A lot of people do this stuff. A lot of people try to cut corners and they trip over dollars to save pennies, and they try to do some of this stuff themselves. Mm-hmm. And you would be surprised at some of the practices that I walk into to vet for acquisitions. And all you're doing when you do that stuff and you do it the wrong way is making that practice much more attractive to one of my clients who want to acquire it, because the return potential is huge. So it makes it very attractive. I mean, very, very attractive to acquire. If you haven't touched your fees, if your fees are in the 40th percentile and you haven't touched them in 20 years, and your hygiene schedule is backed up and you can't get a new patient on your schedule until March, I want to buy that practice 3 months ago, because it's going to double or triple in a 3 to 4 month period of time. So I want to buy it with where the revenue is now, and then help my client get it to that next level. So they've, doubled or tripled their investment in a very short period of time. Makes me look like a hero. And there's nothing really heroic about it. It's math. It's strategy. It's just, there's not getting the right guidance. People miss out on huge opportunities.
Couldn't agree with you more. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I'm a business owner. I just go find the smartest people. Right. That's what and I hire them. So, you don't want to go cheap on lawyers, business advisors, CPAs, marketing, especially in dental practice. It's silly. I don't want to be the smartest guy in the room. I want to surround myself with people smarter than me.
100%.
And that's how I feel, and that's how I run my own business. That's me talking. When it comes down to what we do, like I said early in the show, like we only do one thing, right? I know if I had $1 for every time I walked into a client, somebody's like, I've been doing insurance. I've been for 20 years. And I'm like, oh yeah? Well, I've been driving a car for 20 years too. Doesn't mean I can pull out the transmission, put it back in. So can you do this yourself? Absolutely. You can also represent yourself in the court of law and do your own taxes. But, just one man's opinion, I'm not going to be doing that.
You can also give yourself a haircut.
So with that, I know we got to wrap up. So if anybody wants to find me, www.practicequotient.com. That's practice, and then quotient is spelled QUOT as in Tom, IEN as in Nancy, T as in Tom. Just like intelligence quotient, but practice quotient. And also host a dental business radio. You can find that anywhere, iTunes, etc. And I'm also working on a project. If you are in the state of California, you should check out True Blue Dental Network. That's TRUBLU dentalnetwork.com in the state of California. Yes, I am a busy guy. And yes, this is all I do is insurance. So I'd like to think that I'm pretty good at it. Hopefully all those in listener land got something out of the show. John Harris, it is always a pleasure, and I appreciate you having me here.
Likewise, I appreciate you, sir. You always provide some great insight and wisdom. Always take something away from our conversations. For those of you that tuned in, I really appreciate your support. Grateful to have you join us. If you like the information that we're sharing on this channel, please subscribe, share with your friends, like the video, subscribe to the podcast, comment, whatever you want to do. Let us know if you're enjoying it. Let us know if you've got questions. Let us know if you'd like to see us cover anything that is of interest to you. And I'll do my very best to find the expert in that area and have a conversation. So with that said, I hope everyone has a great day. Pat, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will be talking to you soon.
My pleasure, sir. Thank you.
See ya.